Chapter 4 Hanging on a Promise. He always got a little bit nervous when he was calling them, especially if he looked less than his best. For an Urkin, appearance was everything. The main view screen filled with static as his computer readily located their signal. If the Massive was on the dark side of a planet, it was sometimes impossible to contact them until their satellites were in better range, with less radioactive planetary interference. Sometimes, the signal did not get through at all, making Zim fret and worry. He did not need to worry this time. The signal connected successfully, and he was looking in on the royal chamber where the Tallest liked to sit, or stand whilst receiving messages or drafting Urkins to war, or eating snacks. When he saw no one, he called and called anxiously. My Tallest? Hello? It's Zim. I need to make a tiny little, ever so small request. Hello? One of them looked in on him. It was Almighty Tallest Red. Oh, you. I had just about forgotten what you looked like. Now you've reminded me. Great, he said, his sarcasm dark and bitter. My Tallest! Greetings! The little invader cried, saluting smugly. I have a request. Wait. Tallest Red looked off screen and made a come here gesture. Purple, come here and look at this. Zim waited, standing as straight and tall as he proudly could. Tallest Purple now joined Red, then Purple began to laugh. Zim smiled too, trying to get in on the joke, even though he had no idea what it was. Are you pregnant, Zim? Tallest Red blurted at last. Don't you realize that it's against all of Urkin law to create Smeets without authorization? Smeets are products of war, you know. Let's be done with it and just execute him anyway, Purple said happily. No, my dear Tallest, Zim hurried to say. I suffered a minor incident, as is common on the battlefield. My spooch is just a bit swollen. I am not pregnant. That's just silly. Oh, he's not pregnant. Can't we execute him anyway? Purple asked, looking hurt. Red pushed him out of the way and confronted Zim. Back to business. What do you need? A noose? A pinch of smoot to swallow? A grenade? A vacuumless void? I would like an upgrade. An upgrade to what? Your brain? Almost. It's my pack. It's running a bit low on power, and I thought. Red's face grew dark, and his long antenna arched upwards in a show of aggression. You're asking us for an upgrade, Zim? Yes, my dear Tallest. I fear that my current pack is wearing thin, and I need a new one to continue the annihilation of planet Earth. It's been 22 years, Zim, Tallest Purple cut in, and you haven't conquered anything, have you? Oh, but I'm so close, I can feel it. Please, just one more push and the Earth is yours. I'll even throw in the moon. It's kinda useless, and I did promise it to Gur, but you can use it as target practice. Red looked at Purple, and Purple looked at Red. Then they just burst out laughing. He wants an upgrade. Yeah, to prolong our torment. The defect wants an upgrade. Zim waited. He could never quite get their jokes. And he looks so pregnant, Red laughed, holding his sides. Oh, Urk, I'm gonna die from laughter this time for sure. The transmission cut off suddenly, and Zim jumped with panic. My Tallest? Hello? You've been cut off. He faced the ceiling. Computer, re-establish link. Link loadout failure. They had ended the link, Master. Oh, Dookie. He touched his sore side and stood there nonplussed. Did they just deny me, Zim, an upgrade because I look pregnant? I'm only a little swollen. That means I'll have to try again when I look more acceptable. Dib sat at the desk with his headphones hanging around his neck as he typed up yesterday's morning report that would later be issued in the Franklin newspaper. The day hadn't been very busy. In fact, very little of anything had happened. Such boring days did occur, and he eagerly awaited the call from his boss that would send him out onto the field for real investigation work. For now, though, he was deep in dull legislation. Around him were other paranormal investigators all working in different fields. Dib liked to think he was an expert on all paranormal events, but he could only be assigned to two things, his study being aliens and ghosts, the two most popular events. Any sightings relating to these two topics kept him out of the office and enabled him to travel, whereas some investigators studying vampires or swamp moles rarely left their post at all, unless they got a call about some drunken guy who had thought he'd seen some man suck on another man's neck, mislabeling him as some mythic creature. It happened quite a lot. Aliens and ghosts were taken much more seriously, even though most of them in the end turned out to be terrible hoaxes. His boss, Clifford, looked in at Dib from his office. Dib, line 2, take the call. Sure. He picked up one of the phones by his computer and held it to his ear. As he waited for the call to be patched through, his tired eyes overviewed his desk. It wasn't very clean. There were coffee stains on the desk and his ashtray needed emptying. There was a picture frame of his father and sister taken in the summer 5 years ago. Next to it was a tiny toy figure of Zim that he had made himself out of bits of old plastic and glue. The likeness was very accurate.
Hello? Is this the extraterrestrial sighting department?
Shouted some hysterical woman down the line. Yes, it is, ma'am. His professionalism took over. This is Dib Membrane. What did you see exactly, and where did it happen? He flipped open a notepad and started scribbling down notes.
It's Mrs. Hoffman to you,
came her rattled reply. He had a mental image of her already.
And yes, I saw an alien. Don't question me because it was. I know what I saw, and I wasn't on any drugs. I swear on Almighty God of what I saw.
When did this event occur?
Event? Don't give me that. This was a real alien. I saw it only 2 days ago. I tried to call various times to your department, but no one would answer.
Oh, yeah. We're shut on weekends. Lack of staff.
And you call yourselves investigators? Look, I know what I saw. It was big and scary.
Dip sighed inwardly. Most people who saw aliens were hysterical, this was true. But usually flashing streetlights in a thick fog were mistaken for landing UFOs and little misshapen dogs for Martians. Uh-huh. And what exactly did you see, Mrs. Hoffman? The local woods belonged in a national park where people came to tour the wilderness outside the city. It used to be a Native American territory, now belonged to redwoods, squirrels, and apparently aliens. Dib arrived on the site with his newly appointed assistant, a female he had never worked with before. He didn't like bringing newbies out with him without the proper training, because they only slowed him down. Along for the trip was Gary, who did the interviews. Mrs. Hoffman was there, pointing at the woodland and shouting hysterically, repeating the same story to anyone who would listen. "It was in there! Just to the left of that old river! It had some equipment out. I'm pretty sure it was equipment." Dib nodded and decided to look himself, if just to get away from her yelling. In his backpack was his camera, torch, notepad, sensor array, and DNA sampler. He preferred to work alone and left the new girl with Gary. The woods were dark, even this early in the morning. The canopy of leaves above threw out long, ever-shifting shadows across the carpet of grass, producing a sense of mystery and menace. He was told that wolves lived here, though their sightings were chalked up as myths. The river was a really small stream that cut through the wood like an artery. There were signs of recent activity here, he had to admit. There were heavy scorch marks up a tree, 2 days old maybe, and some of the grass had been flattened, as if something had come along and sat on it for a while. He mused to himself, thinking that Mrs. Hoffman may not have been lying after all. Dib naturally didn't want to get excited. More aliens meant more Urkins, and he didn't know if he should be happy or scared at the prospect, for he always believed that Zim was quite capable of calling for backup. He only started to believe he was dealing with aliens when he saw the 2 obvious boot marks in the mud nearest the river where the grass began to thin out. And the boot marks were very small indeed. They were Zim-sized boot marks. His heart filled with dark dread as he fetched out his tour and cut through the shadows with its intervention. As he continued to search the immediate area, he found broken branches and one misshapen machine part. It was Urkin in nature, its design was too familiar. Dib was now angry. The Voot had landed here, and Zim and Gura must have had a fucking picnic out in the goddamn open. Fuck's sake. Sprinting like a gazelle, he broke free from the woods and rushed back to the investigators, and straight for Gary, who was busy recording the interview with Mrs. Hoffman. He almost barreled into them, stopping just in time before he smashed into the new girl. He didn't even know her name. Sorry, Gary, Dib said out of breath. He blamed his lack of stamina on the cigarettes. But they're half-price donuts, right now at Marmalade's. You're serious, right? Gary looked at him with such skepticism that Dib thought his ruse was blown. They never sell their donuts at half the price. Dear Lord, I better hurry before they sell out. You don't mind finishing up the interview, do you? Not at all. I just need to see what you've recorded so far. Okay, just don't tape over anything. And Gary gave him the video camera, microphone, and tape recorder. Then he quickly started heading across the meadow towards the car, leaving Dib with Mrs. Hoffman and the girl. Before Dib had even gotten the equipment ready, Mrs. Hoffman was off on another tirade. Oh, it was horrible, just horrible. I only came out this way because I heard noises, really loud banging noises, and I thought to myself that I'll just check it out, thinking it was just some crazy kids playing around and such. That's when I saw it, stalking about in them trees. Dib pretended to record her by resting the camera on his arm and looking through the lens, when in fact he just erased all of Gary's previous work. Uh-huh, Dib encouraged, wondering how much she had actually seen. It had fiery red eyes that glowed in the dark. Satan's eyes! And its skin was green, I think, and it looked so vicious. It had a gun. A gun? She seemed pretty shook up, and Dib suspected that she was exaggerating a little, but he had to throw her off the scent. I'm saving him twice in 2 days. I must be insane. If it wasn't for his whole degeneration thing, I wouldn't even be bothering, would I? Zim must have come out here 2 days ago. For what, I have no idea, but man, I'm going to kill him for this. Okay, Mrs. Hoffman, did you get a picture of this creature? No, I didn't. Well, I hate to tell you this, but what you saw on Saturday night was just a kid in a costume. What? She looked truly baffled. Yeah, a little kid. He got lost in the woods after he pranked everyone with a toy gun. He thought it was Halloween. But it's February, she said. Exactly. And those scary, evil eyes he had? Makeup, Dib pressed, thinking of last-second excuses. He felt the girl looking at him peculiarly, but he took no notice of her. The worry began to lift from Mrs. Hoffman's face as if she had just escaped from a trap. Really? All I saw was a child in a costume? Yeah, totally. Oh, thank God, and here I was thinking we were being invaded by aliens. We were invaded 2 decades ago, but sure, whatever. He remained affable with Mrs. Hoffman and offered to take her back to the office for some coffee, which she declined. However, inside he was angry with Zim. Very angry. It was horribly ironic that he was now trying to defend the stupid alien after suffering such ridicule as a child in school and then college. Now the tables were turning and it felt like a massive joke was being played on him. And Zim was ignorant to it all, of course. That had never changed. Mrs. Hoffman, looking relieved, got in her own car to drive home. Dib turned the video camera off and was about to head on over to his own car as well when the new girl rose out of hand to him. He stared at it as if her hand was a keen, double-edged knife. So, you're Dilbert, right? No. It's just plain old Dib. Dib membrane, he said, uncomfortably, but he took her hand in his and shook it. Her hand was very soft. He was scared of her, he found. Scared of all women. And now he was truly sorry he had bumped into her without apologizing. Their hands parted. I'm Clara. So you're the famous son of Professor Membrane? Oh my, what an honor. Dib tried to smile, but it was a miserable failure and he suspected that he was sweating already. He was never very good with the opposite sex, and he wasn't sure how well Gaz represented the female species in general. For all he knew, they were all stubborn, impatient, and plain rude, just like her. I wouldn't get too excited. Me and my dad are very different. He's into science, and well, I'm here, trying to catch ghosts on camera and chasing aliens through national parks. What about you? You're new to this outfit, aren't you? He had barely so much as looked at her since arriving at the park. Not just because she was new, but because she was a girl. He didn't want to like her. Liking her would mean nothing but disappointment in some way or other. She probably had a boyfriend or had kids. No way she was single, and even if she was, there was no way she'd ever fancy him. He was a scrawny dork who wore glasses and smoked. No one wore glasses anymore. They were seen as old-fashioned. Most people use eye contacts instead, or just had the eye laser surgery. Yes, I started last week. Much of the time I was just filling out questionnaires and watching training videos before they let me anywhere near my own office. So why did you join the investigation team, if you don't mind me asking? They started walking back to his car, a car whose seats were still slightly green and damp with alien blood. She had not brought her own transport. Gary had brought her over, and now Gary was gone, seeking donuts that were not half price. Well, I really want to get into the field of zoology, but in order to be certified, I had to be a paranormal investigator for a year before I actually qualify. Zoology, huh? You like animals? Very much so, all types really. The weirder the better. So what are your hobbies? Chasing little green aliens, he thought, smiling despite himself. I watch TV, he lied, trying to appear normal, but instead came off as sounding boring. You? Oh, I like dancing and music. He was so nervous. He was not used to this. If there was a guidebook on how to talk to girls, he would be flicking through it right now. I also like games. Video games? Yeah, I mainly play them with Zim. His insides dropped at the realization of his mistake. I mean, myself. Zim? She asked, looking at him funny. Yeah, he's this friend, sorta. He's a little insane. They got to his car. The green bloodstains looked particularly bad under the full light of the morning sun. There was no way she would not see them, unless she got in the back. Great. First chance I get chatting to a girl and Zim fucks it up for me somehow without him even being there. The seats are still a bit wet at the front. Had them cleaned recently because I spilled lots of diet poop all over them. Mind scooting to the back? He asked, hoping she wouldn't mind. No, of course not. Dib sighed in relief. They drove back to the office where he was expected to report in. He dropped Clara off and waved her goodbye. As he watched her make her way back to the office department, he wished he was someone else. Someone with the confidence to ask girls out, to step out of line once or twice, and to not give a flying fudge about Arcan invaders. But he did care. Unfortunately. And he decided that he was not putting up with this shit anymore. Zim? Dib practically had the door explode inwards after he kicked it. The girl was seated on the couch, eyes wide, and when he saw Dib, he threw his arms up and whooped eagerly. It's Dib! You want to sit next to me and have some ham? I have plenty of ham. Master just made some fresh wet biscuits. I saved them and hid them under the sofa. Dib closed the door behind him and looked about wildly. He hated being here, but his anger disregarded any previous anxieties. Where is he? He noticed that Gur had part of his hand missing. It made the robot look odder than usual. Then again, Gur was known to lose things. The human heard the toilet elevator before Gur had any time to reply. Zim stepped out of the toilet with surprising dignity and walked on over with a hard stare. But it was difficult to see the alien as anything but intimidating when he was limping. Badly. Ugh, what is it this time? The Arcan moaned in a groggy, croaky voice. Can't you see I'm busy? And look, you're trudging mud everywhere. I can't keep having you come here in my base. Dib pretty much screamed at him. It was the first time he was truly angry, and at once he noticed Zim's posture completely change. His smooth antenna flattened right down, and he almost shied back a little as if Dib was growing taller and taller before him in his rage. What do you think you were doing, you idiot? Zim still held his ground, his left eye narrowed. Doing what? How dare you come in here and accuse Zim of... You were in the woods, weren't you, on Saturday night? Waterfall National Park ring any bells? And you went out without your disguise again, didn't you? I was... You idiot! They're going to find you! They're going to capture you, and they're going to kill you, Zim! Don't you care? Shouldn't you be just a little more vigilant? Zim snarled, and his look of fright passed suddenly. You don't tell Zim what to do, you fucking little worm! I can do as I please! You forget your place! And what place is that, Zim? Tell me, is that where I stand, watching you get dissected? Is it my place watching you scream and cry while they hack your arm off? Because this is the reality. I won't be able to save you when they come for you. Why do you talk to me like you're not one of them? He barked back hoarsely. Dib caught himself. Then he blew his top. You're right! What the hell am I thinking? You're a fucking alien spreading mayhem and carnage. I should have exposed you while I was still in school. Stop causing me such grief! He spun round. He was done. Dib? Dib didn't stop. He approached the door. Then he opened it with a massive jerk of his hand. Dib, stop! He stepped out onto the sunlit porch. The birds were singing, but he didn't hear them. You don't turn your back on me, Dibworm. You promised me you wouldn't. Dib then did stop, but he was trembling with anger. Hot breath kept storming out of his partly opened lips. Without even looking at him, his eyes locked onto his car instead, and he answered coldly, You're an alien. And you believe in promises? Humans do. You owe me. I owe you nothing. Because of you, I'm half deaf. I haven't forgotten. Dib looked over at him then, his anger a little less. It was an accident. You can't hold it against me your whole life. Was it an accident? The hate and rage returned, and Dib stormed down to the garden path to his car. Tonight then, at the treaty, Dib yelled as he opened the car door. And don't be late.